This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, and we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 16th. Today is the 16th of August 2019, and I am DM.
I am Tuem.
And I am Miss K, your host. Again, in case you missed it, this is Winning Headlines. Let's take a look at today's headlines. The Star, CCTV cameras to soon watch all public places.
Yes.
Ooh. Daily Nation, corridor of disease, and The Standard, MPs denied US visa over drugs, terrorism links.
Yes.
Let's start with this US denials.
Context of this, when the MPs went to the States, I think there were 90 of them.
Last week, to enjoy Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes. Apparently some of them were denied visas because of drug links and terrorism.
Have
links.
they listed their names there?
They haven't.
That would be the saucy bit.
Although they are hints. They are hints. And I want to say this, and I want to go at the Americans. They think America is the Holy Land. It's like Jerusalem. But I also want to say this. From 2002, the Western governments and Western embassies issued travel advisories, travel bans on Kenyan government officials. And just the other day, about a month ago, DCI and Haji, they went to 11 Western embassies and they said, we will give you 11 names of corrupt Kenyans.
Out of their own volition, they toured these embassies and gave them names.
Yes, I wondered why they didn't go to the embassy of Bangladesh or Papua New Guinea or North Korea, for example. They had to. And you see why? There's an African mentality. We are very submissive to the West.
But did we say that our dream is to be white? We've discussed this book, Black
It's
White Masks.
It's called pandering.
Yes.
The issue I have with this headline is that it's a headline. Because it's been put as if it's a catastrophic thing that these people were denied access to the Holy Land, to the New Jerusalem.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? America has gangs, and they do drugs and all manner of things. Some of them are biker gangs, the Hells Angels, and then I was seeing the other one is called the Banditos. And you know what they call the Banditos? Yeah. They call it the Big Four.
Sour.
This is self-righteousness.
I understand the self-righteousness, but also I understand that this headline is highly speculative. Because last week that they went, who cares anymore?
Who cares?
So we're going to ask ourselves this question. Is this headline topical or is it speculative? Is it repetitive or is it groundbreaking?
Yes.
Finally, is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
Lazy.
It's
toss
lazy.
it.
But before we toss it.
Really?
Yes.
Still here.
There's an interesting picture there.
Upper third, Uhuru Moikin joined Raila's VIP visitors. And I saw this thing and I said to myself, dynasties are very shameless. and they're also jealous institutions. You know, they look like peacocks and behave like vultures. You see, you cannot renegade on a deal that you made 4 years ago. If William Ruto is a deputy president of this country and you supported him, show him some respect.
There you have it.
Toss it. Daily Nation, corridor of disease. This story feels very familiar.
It is familiar. I think the Daily Nation has done an investigation and they're piecemealing the story. So they're giving us the headlines one at a time. Yeah. I think it was 2 days ago when the headline was River of Poison.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Today it's corridor of disease, and tomorrow might be channels of plague or something like that. I mean, I must say that it's very poetic and lyrical.
Yeah.
It is. I do like the headline. It's actually a line. It's catchy.
Absolutely.
But the story is no longer new. It's no longer groundbreaking. It's repetitive, and for that reason, out it goes. Finally, CCTV cameras to soon watch all public places. In this article, we are told about how CS Matiang'i wants cameras to connect the entire city. Of course, we do already have cameras, and we see them every time you're driving, flashing in your eyes at night. But they want to increase the surveillance. They want to make us perhaps as watched as London, which I think is second in having the largest number of cameras watching the people.
Absolutely.
But there has been a claim, I think it was by Amnesty International's head, and he put in a claim against it, saying that they want that bill to be stopped until we're able to have laws that govern cybersecurity, laws that govern access, laws that govern how the government can use the information that they get from those CCTVs against the people. And he quoted what is happening in Hong Kong, where there have been protests in the the streets.
Absolutely.
And they can't get the protesters because these clever buggers are using masks. But
what did you call them?
Clever buggers. They're using masks.
Yeah.
But what they're using is this very innovative gait technology, which is looking at how you stand, how you move.
Yeah.
They're using that to be able to get
that
them.
just blows my mind. That is beyond sophisticated. They can see how you stand and walk and then pick you out.
From a place.
My question is, how did they get the baseline, this database of your gait? Did you go into the police station and do different moves and then they recorded them?
No, but it's very easy to know how the Chinese walk.
But they're all Chinese. What are you talking about?
That is so stereotypical.
But this headline reminds me of a book that we did
a couple of weeks
ago. Yes, 1984 by George Orwell.
And I do agree.
Big Brother is going to be watching.
But it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, the London police use it to be able to stop small crime as it happens. Yeah. And one of the things we have to say is, as Kenya, I think that we already have that ability and capacity to see.
The problem is that in Kenya, when your criminal case is in court, is when the footage will disappear.
Response is our problem. That's all I'm going to say.
I mean, but
disappear.
But give government some credit. A lot of the security reforms that have happened in this country have really improved the security environment in the country. All these security cameras that you see around, and I think they've reduced the crime rates.
But I have to say this, I feel like this is a good headline. For once, I'm not going to go against the Star. I'm going to say that they give us a headline and a story that lifted the veil of public ignorance. So I say this is our winning headline. What do you think?
I agree.
And we have a winning headline from the Star. On to our next segment, the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Just like the headlines, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to break them down for you. We ask ourselves, is a cartoon humorous or is it dry? Is it satirical or is it pessimistic? And finally, is it effective or just plain lazy?
Okay, I'm seeing wildlife.
Gado woke up, he came back to Kenya.
Extinct wildlife, it's a mammoth.
Okay, describe before you start negating what is there.
Yes, a drawing of people. Looks like a seminar.
Of people.
And this was the launch of the economic
survey 2019. I think happened around April.
It did, yeah.
Or April. and the guy is saying on the podium, he says, if we look at the bigger picture, we expect the economy to grow. But in the back is the big elephant in the room, and it's the referendum. It's
more the woolly mammoth in the room, but we're not going to mention the differences in anatomy.
Yeah.
I have to say this. This is a very old cartoon.
Yeah,
if at all, the economic survey was released in
April.
Yeah.
A couple of months later, it's from the archives.
I think it's one of those that Gado had drawn earlier, put it in his cupboard for a rainy day.
Yeah.
The rainy day is
for
here.
that reason,
absolutely.
The Star.
The dance. Caricature of ODM leader Raila Odinga, and probably second in command. And he's dancing with the newlywed Anne Waiganjo. Struggling not to say what. Yes. And they're dancing, but Raila seems to be dancing twist. And what's her name? Waiganjo. Has her leg up, and the caption there is, my folks are ready to meet you. And
the folks are Central Kenya folks.
It's Gema.
Yeah.
It's Gema. And I think...
Ozone is being naughty. She's still a bride. She just got married a month ago and you're drawing her there dancing with somebody.
There's a healthy distance between them. Come on, guys.
No.
Dancing with a dinosaur.
I don't want to judge. Who knows her intentions, you know?
I say we put it in the parking bay. It's a good cartoon, but let's see what Victor Ndula has for us today from the Daily Nation.
Absolutely.
Dreams.
What cute pajamas.
I do love them.
Before, guys, we analyze, we describe. Right? Caricature of Uhuru Kenyatta sleeping in his pajamas. And he's sleeping with his... he's putting on shoes and he's sleeping. And his pajamas are Jubilee.
He must be in his living room. He's on a chaise.
Yes. And he's dreaming of... he's in a car that looks like a Mustang. And him and Ruto are driving. But the person who's sitting on him is Raila Odinga, and he's controlling the direction of
this very weird steering wheel.
Yes.
I think the size of the steering wheel goes outside the car.
He's taken such liberties with car design. There's even a hole, and then the steering goes through it, the steering wheel.
But they seem to be enjoying themselves, Uhuru and Raila.
Yes.
And one William Ruto is agonizing.
Crying as per usual.
As usual.
Weeping.
You think he's crying because the car is moving fast?
No, because he's not driving. Because there's a new driver.
But note by the
because
ties.
he can't control direction.
For once, William Ruto is wearing a red tie, so is Uhuru, and Raila has a different colored tie, a blue one. Tie. I thought that was interesting at least.
Wow, okay.
We have so many garment codes.
I don't know what Ndula knows.
It's a good cartoon.
Absolutely. I think it's a good cartoon. So what do we say between the two of them? The twins that we usually
They're
say
actually
they are.
contenders. Both Ozons and Victor Ndula's are quite good.
I love the dance.
But I do like the dream. The dream is
I think
funnier.
I'll go with the dream
Why
as
are
well.
you always with other people? Why are you not with me?
That's how the table goes. Our winning cartoon goes to Victor Ndula of the Nation. At least I'm with you now. What's our final thought?
Shame.
Married.
I'm married. Please stop shaming me.
So am I.
Show, please prove. Anyway, what's our final thought?
And now, our final thought. Inspired by a book entitled Primitive Rebels, Studies in Archaic Forms of Social Movements in the 19th and 20th Century, by a man called Eric Hobsbawm. You want to give us a summary?
Not yet. I'll take us back through the week.
Yeah.
This week we've been looking at gangs, gangsters, and the mafia. On Tuesday we began with Killing Pablo, The Hunt for the World's Greatest Outlaw by Mark Bowden. And we're looking at the violent rise and fall of Pablo Escobar and how they took him down violently. You live by the sword, die by the sword.
Right.
On Wednesday we looked at The Untouchables by Oscar Frehley and Elliot Ness, an autobiography by Elliot Ness himself, and co-written by Oscar Frehley, and we're looking at Al Capone and his rise and fall during the Prohibition era in the United States. And yesterday we looked at Gomorrah by Robert Saviano, a look into a very violent but very localized gang, a very old one, in, where did it come from?
Is it
Naples.
Naples.
And I told you that if you
Napolitano.
have anything that you have that is from China, then it's passed through the Camorra. Today, including what?
SGL.
No comment. But today we're looking at social bandits, primitive rebels, and studies in archaic forms of social movements in the 19th and 20th century. But we're also looking at another book, our very own book by Professor Mutahi Nguni, From Monopoly to Oligopoly of Violence, an exploration of a 4-point hypothesis on organized and organic militia in Kenya.
Perhaps we can start with Hobsbawm. Primitive Rebels. So it's written by a foremost British historian. He died in 2012 at the age of 95. And he specialized in the rise of industrialism, socialism, and nationalism. Himself, he was a self-declared Marxist. And he's probably one of the world's most famous historians. So this book was written 60 years ago in 1959. So it's half as old as our executive producer. And it's... I knew a missile was coming. So the book is an insight and analysis into social movements, beginning from the earliest ones, and hence the title Primitive Rebels. So the book covers many forms of rebellion, from secret societies to the mafia to revolutions to mobs and even to riots. And to put it simply, it's a book about the origin of collective rebellion. So it's an apt end to the week's theme because it ties it in an academic way. It gives us an interpretation and an explanation about the formation, about the propagation, and even about the deaths of different social movements. So although this book is 60 years old, it still gives us the concepts still give us an insight into the features of today's movements, like the Black Lives Matter movement in America, our own NRM. Remember the NRM? Remember that it was an outlawed group by Matiang'i. He put it in the same category as Jeshi la Wazee,
but who's advising?
And Al-Shabaab.
Who's advising the person who saw himself in?
This is just a case as to how fortunes can turn in a year.
Reality can be stranger than fiction. So, the contributions in this book are very wide. So we are going to select those that actually apply to the themes of the week. So, and I'm going to begin with a concept that he calls social banditry, or the social bandit. And it gives us an understanding about the leadership itself, the leadership of social movements, from the very primitive ones to the very sophisticated ones that actually start revolutions. So he coined the term social bandit, and banditry is the most primitive form of social protest. It is where basically the outlaw is breaking the social order by doing unlawful things, but in the eyes of the masses, he is acting on their behalf.
Yes.
or in the eyes of the masses, this person is being unfairly aggressed rather by the state.
And I have to stop you there and tell you one of the things from monopoly to oligopoly is that one of the hypotheses that we put forward is something called distance decay.
Yes.
So distance decay borrows from the first principle of geography, which says that all things are related, but near things are more related than distant things.
Yeah.
So there's something that we borrowed from that, and we called it what we call regulatory decay.
Yes.
That's distance between the poor and the law.
Yes.
And I think it can be said that justice is for the rich, but the law is for the poor.
Is for the poor.
And that's exactly
poor people that are regulated, and that's why you have these organic leaderships that rise up, because these people are too far removed from the state, which is almighty,
Absolutely.
and the law is oppressive.
Absolutely.
That is
So
true.
what happens then with this social bandit is that the poor protect him.
Yes.
Or her, and regard him as a champion. They idolize him, they idealize him, and turn him into a myth.
Yes.
So he's like the mythical hero in the book, The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood.
Yes.
Remember, Robin Hood stole from the rich, which is banditry,
Yes.
and then he gave it to the poor, which
Aha.
is heroism. But then again, that's what the government does in the reverse. It's reverse Robin Hood. They take from the poor and give to the rich. But that is just a sidebar.
Yes.
So, and also tying in with the week's theme, you can see that this Robin Hood principle actually cuts across Al Capone.
It definitely does.
The
And I can
Camorra?
think about
Yes.
Pablo Escobar himself.
Absolutely.
He was protected by with the place where he came from. And
Yes.
those are people who protected him. And for them to get him, Los Pepes had to take out his close
Medellin.
people one by one until he was exposed.
Absolutely, and that protection is because he actually gave back to them. So the bandit can break the law in the open, like Raila Odinga swearing himself in last year, doing something illegal, but he was protected by the masses. I think he's the most protected politician.
He is the people's president.
We have. So the author gives many descriptions about the social bandit and who eventually lead people. So could you indulge me and we play a game?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
So I'll read some descriptions that Hobom gives us, and then you'll tell me which Kenyan social bandit it corresponds with.
Okay.
First one.
Yeah.
The chief attraction of the bandit was and is that he's a poor boy who has made it. He's a surrogate for the masses to lift itself out of its own poverty, helplessness, and meekness. Another clue. He is a terror to the lords.
Oh, it's a chicken seller from Sugoi.
Does he have a name?
William Ruto.
William Ruto, Deputy President.
Second and last one.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The fact that the bandit lives well and shows off his wealth does not normally put the public off. In fact, paradoxically, the expenditure of the slum boy, quote unquote, serves to link him to the admirers, to his admirers, and not to separate him from them. Do you need further clues?
Mike?
Sonko.
I didn't finish, you did.
Yes.
I walked into that one.
So there you have it. These people, then we can say from description, have the social banditry on them and are actually capable of leading revolutions or referendums or anything of that flavor.
Uprising. My biggest takeaway, guys, from this book is a chapter on mafia. And he says 3 things that constitute the mafia. And this is the Sicilian mafia, to be specific. He says, the first rule is the general attitude of dislike towards the state and the law. Second, the decentralized form of power and patronage. And third, control over communities' social life by secret societies or a gang. You see, guys, the methods or rituals of bonding of the mafia is they cut the palm, a little blood pours out, right? That bonds you to your group or to the family. And then they burn some things, right? And that's some paper. Now, then you are inducted into the code of silence, or what they call omerta. Right?
Sounds like a new word.
Yes.
It does.
Omerta. Omera, what's up? Anyway, the Mungiki in Kenya.
I feel very targeted today.
Now to ground it to our own situation here.
Yes.
We have our gangs in this country, and one of them is the Mungiki. And I've been privy to some of their oath takings. And what they do is very early in the morning.
This is a confession.
Should we end this programming?
I have seen. Matengi can come for me, you know.
Hey, the CCTV.
Yes, with CCTVs and everything. They wake up very early in the morning, about 5:30 a.m.
Yeah.
A black lamb is slaughtered. They get some blood. I think they mix it with some water. And then a guy stands there with some blood, and they all line up, the new recruits, they all line up like this. And the guy has a fly whisk. So he dips the blood into the water mixture and the blood. And as they come, he says, and then he slaps them with
this bloody whisk.
With a bloody thing, and then they pass, you know.
What was that French thing you said?
But the reason that happens, guys, is because there is the absence of the state. Now, the reason the Sicilian mafia took over in Sicily, okay, is because the state then was absent. The reason Mungiki has taken over or took over then is because the state was absent in some places, and so the society had a feel to get some protection.
Yeah, they're looking for a champion.
From an organic group.
Yeah,
I have two things that I want to say from what you've said.
Yes.
The first thing you've talked about, they were looking for, the state was absent or abstinent. Yeah. I'm going to break that down for us.
Yeah.
Correct.
So there's two things that can happen here. There's one hypothesis that we have, and we call it gap hypothesis.
Yeah.
And this hypothesis is the second one. Remember the first thing I said is that distance decay.
Yes.
All things are related, but near things are more related than distant things.
Yes.
What this does is that it creates spaces.
Absolutely.
Spaces that are vacuums, and nature abhors a vacuum.
Absolutely.
So what happens is something has to come in to fill in that vacuum. And that vacuum is created either because the state doesn't have the masses or the human power to be able to control all of the territory which it occupies.
So the force to space ratio is not in favor of the state.
Not in
favor the state itself is intimidated.
It's intimidated.
Absolutely.
So I ask myself, I'm one policeman, there are 500 gang members out there. What do I do? It's safest for me to just stay in the barracks.
Absolutely.
But there's also a different one, and this one is a bit dangerous.
Yes.
Sometimes the state could be complicit. Not the whole state, but rogue elements within it could be complicit. So instead of acting, they abstain from acting, and they allow the militia to proliferate in an area where they're supposed to be controlled.
So in this case, the absence is very deliberate too.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But what this does is that now in these spaces, you have a gang appearing and becoming the alternative state.
Yes.
It controls the area that these people are now out of.
Absolutely.
Yes. And that sometimes is what happens with gangs. And that's what happens in closed off spaces. The gang will close off the space the same way. What is his name? Pablo Escobar
did.
And his Medellin cartel closed down the area of operation that he came from. The same way Camorra closes down Naples.
Yes.
The same way Al Capone closed down Chicago. And the same way we had Mungiki closing down certain areas or certain businesses in Kenya.
Absolutely.
But number two, there's joining this group. Now we've occupied this space. Now we are in control. Someone wants to join. You've mentioned something, and I'm going to call it what we call it in our book. Rituals of bonding. And there's something very interesting. And I don't know if I should say it. But Daisy talked about he talked about the characteristics of a leader. I'm going to talk about the characteristics of a follower. If you're joining a gang, there's something about them that is very similar to the same people who join churches, for instance. And there's always rituals that you use to become a member of this enclosed group. Then you're able to act in the group and you're able to benefit from the group. And that's the same thing Giki does. That's the same thing you do in church. You go, you get confirmed, you get baptized, then now you're a member of the group. And you cannot break the bond that you now have with your new brothers.
Beautiful. You know, you've reminded me of something, especially about co-option. You see, the Sicilian mafia, they started around the 1890s. And then the Italian politicians realized, because these guys were so close-knit, they could actually use them as a voting bloc for their own purposes. So the state and the militias and the mafia started joining together for their own purpose. There was compromise. I allow you to vote for me, and then I give you some deal at some point. Same in the Kenyan case. I will not mention names. 2002, Mungiki had a specific candidate. I will not mention. But because they formed such a huge constituency of the vote, it was very beneficial for the gang and for the person they voted for. And I'm going to end there.
What I wanted to say is these principles of gang formations, the principles of forming a gang or a movement leader, can also be, aside from the security element, the violence element, and the physical element, can also be extrapolated to the thought leadership element.
Right.
Like now, we're in a seminal moment politically. We're headed towards a census and before the election, a referendum.
Yeah.
And this is one of, and you mentioned it earlier, this is a point where society needs, feels like it needs a champion.
Right.
And it's a champion in thought leadership.
Yes.
And this is how
the
social bandit comes forward.
Yeah.
So Kenya will need a champion in this seminal moment.
Yeah.
And it will be an inspirational idea that is very different from the 2005 referendum, which was like a market sales pitch of banana and orange.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Wow.
Is it? That was marketing, and now we need a social bandit.
Yes. I do agree.
Absolutely.
And there are two types of bandits, and you can identify them right now. We have William Ruto on one side, and we have Raila Odinga on the other side.
Yeah.
But it's the one who the public will love the most, the one who will espouse their aspirations the most, that will carry the day.
The most Robin Hood-esque.
Let me read a quote before you finish.
Okay. Last quote.
Last quote.
Last.
The job of the social bandit is to avenge injustice, to hammer the lords, to take them from the wealth they have robbed, and with fire and sword to destroy all that cannot serve the common good.
Last one. He is a terror to the lords.
This is Winning Headlines. Today we had a winning headline from The Star, and we had a winning cartoon from the Daily Nation. Victor Ndula gave us our winning cartoon. I don't know, but I will give a quote from Al Capone. He gave a quote, and it's mentioned even in the movie that we watched about them and the book that we read, The Untouchables. He says that you can get much farther with a kind word than with a gun. But where I'm from, you get much farther with a kind word and a gun than you get with just a kind word only. This week we've looked at gangs and gangsters, mafia, and gangs, gangsters, and mafia. And I'm going to say this. I don't know whether they're good or they're bad, but it depends on the society in which they come from and how that society views them and how they themselves rose up in that society. And I hope that this week you have had an interesting exposition into where they come from and how they end. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and you can find us on your TV channels. Take a moment to look for us. We are on GoTV, Star Times, and Pang, free to air. Have a great weekend. See you next week.